It's day 28 of lockdown, and we find ourselves in that peculiar position where we're waiting for our President Cyril Ramaphosa to speak to us tonight and tell us who knows what. Perhaps some measure of easing of lockdown regulations so that the economy can come out of its state of torpor that the lockdown has forced it into. But then there's always the possibility that he might actually announce a further extension of the lockdown, because if you think back, the last time he did this, we had literally a week to go. And as things stand at the moment, we have 7 days to go before lockdown ends next Thursday. So it's a bit of a crapshoot because there's no clarity on what President Ramaphosa is going to say to us this evening. But that aside, I want to address the matter of equity, and I mean specifically equity in the application of lockdown regulations, particularly when somebody contravenes those lockdown regulations. I speak here specifically of the Minister of Communications, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, who, as you probably are all aware, contravened lockdown regulations a couple of weeks ago when she stopped off at a friend and colleague's home, Mduduzi Manana, to ostensibly collect masks and gloves to drop off somewhere, who knows, and was invited in to partake of lunch with Mduduzi Manana and his family, which she did. And then, of course, those notorious pictures appeared on Instagram and Twitter and all over social media about her enjoying her COVID-19 lockdown lunch. Social media lit up, of course, and she was roundly condemned for doing so. President Ramaphosa took the matter under advisement, and a couple of days later he announced that he had suspended the minister for 2 months, one of which without pay, after having met with her and heard her side of the story. And he ostensibly is apparently said to have told her that he found her explanation unconvincing. And that's all well and good. There, of course, were calls for her head, and I most certainly made calls for her head. As far as I'm concerned, she should have been fired on the spot and made an example of. She is a member of the executive after all, and if anybody knows the significance of the lockdown regulations and why they ought to be observed, surely it has to be a member of the executive. But be that as it may, the fact that she had in fact been censured, 2 months suspension, one of which without pay, was deemed to be, if not a suitable punishment, then at least a punishment of sorts. But what popped up on my timeline the other day was the fact that she had paid R1,000 admission of guilt fine, and this was as the result of a press release that came out of the National Prosecuting Authority. Well, here's the thing, talking about equity of application of lockdown regulations and the censure in the event that you break lockdown regulations, there have been multiple cases that I have become aware of where people have broken lockdown regulations, have been caught by the SAPS or the SANDF, and had a fine of R2,500 levied. So there again we have an equity issue. So it seems that in the context of George Orwell's book Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. That seems to apply here. But it gets worse, because there is at least one case that I'm aware of in the Helderberg Basin where a gentleman went to the pharmacy to fill his chronic medication script. He was stopped on the way at a roadblock, and he was asked where he was going. He explained, and he was asked to produce his prescription. But as he explained to the SAPS member who stopped him, he didn't have the script because it was a repeat script which was lodged, of course, on his pharmacy's computer. So he couldn't produce the script. His protestations and explanations were brushed aside, and he was issued a R2,500 fine for breaking lockdown regulations. When he protested, the policeman apparently said to him, well, that's not my problem. You need to go and see the public prosecutor, and you need to get this sorted out. So let me understand this. He's an elderly gentleman, which places him in the at-risk age cohort. He now has to make his way to the Somerset West Magistrates Court, present himself to the public prosecutor, argue his case in the hope that the R2,500 fine is going to be quashed. So he must now place himself at further risk already being in the at-risk age cohort is probably a pensioner living on a fixed income, which is taking a hammering with the constant dropping of the prime lending rate, which really doesn't equate to fair and equal treatment. Does it, Mr. President? I don't expect that you'll ever get to watch this little video of mine, but I sincerely hope it comes to your attention that there is an inequity in the manner in which the COVID lockdown regulations are being applied. That's all for now. I'll see what the President has to say this evening, and I might choose to venture an opinion about it tomorrow. Bye for now.